Hey guys, in this video we're going to be going over how to take your camera and make your very first photograph using manual settings only. So before you continue on this video, if you need to pause it, go grab your camera, grab your manual. If you haven't bought your camera yet, good on you for watching this video to figure out which settings you're going to need on the camera you purchase. But if you do have your camera, grab the manual, and then let's jump into this. Okay, so once you've got your camera, go ahead and power it on and make sure that it's set to manual exposure mode. For me, I'm going to reference my camera here. Yours may be completely different, but this is generally what you're going to want to look for. You're going to want to look for an M or something that says manual exposure mode or something like that. Check the manual. It'll walk you through how to set that, but make sure it's in manual exposure mode. Once you've got it in manual, now we're going to go back into the settings, and there's some things that I want to set as a baseline. We're not going to go into detail as to what these are in this video. Later on, we will talk more in depth about what these settings mean. But for now, don't worry about it. Just find it and set it, and that's it. So I'm going to jump into my menu, and the first thing that I'm going to look for is where I set the image size or the image quality. You'll have to figure out what yours is called in your camera, but I'm going to set it to the highest resolution photo because you can always shrink a photo down, but you can never blow it up without losing quality. So I'm going to take some of the higher resolution photos. So set your quality or your image size or whatever it might be called to high. Go ahead and set that. The next thing I want you to do is look for the white balance. In the white balance, when you find that setting, there's going to be several different little icons. One of them might look like a little sunshine, and it might say daylight or direct sunlight or something like that. Another one might be like a little light bulb and say incandescent or something. You're going to want to look for that white balance, and you want to set it to the little sunshine icon. So set it to that. Once you've done that, the next thing that I want you to look for in your camera is the ISO. So you're going to find your ISO, and there's going to be numbers like 100, 200, 400. You might have some numbers in between those, 250, 320, a bunch of other things. You want to find ISO, and you want to set it to either 200 or 400, maybe 400. Why don't we start with 400? Set it to ISO 400. And let's see, and I think that's about it in the settings on the within the menu of your camera. So you want to set those things, and it may be in the menu on the back, it may be on the top. I don't know where it is on your camera, but you want to find those and set them. Okay. The next thing that I want you to adjust is let's see here, is the metering mode. So look for metering mode in your camera, and you may have one, you may have several different modes. Probably the best mode to start off with is the more complex mode. There's, on my camera here, I've got spot metering, I've got area metering, and I've got evaluative metering. Spot metering looks like a little dot when you adjust it. The area metering might look like a couple of parentheses or a circle, a big circle. And the evaluative metering might have like multiple squares, or it could be called matrix metering on it. So I'm going to pick the evaluative or matrix metering or whatever it is, the one that's got a bunch of little squares. So I'll adjust that. A couple other things that you want to look for as well is to get that flash turned off. If you've got a flash on your camera like mine does, make sure that thing doesn't pop up. If you need to, if you can't figure out how to keep it locked down and not turn on, then you may need to tape it. But for mine, it stays down unless I hit this little button. If yours pops up and goes off, that's a problem. Make sure it stays down. The other thing too to be aware of is that there is a exposure compensation thing. It's got a little plus and minus. You want to make sure that if that is set to anything, it needs to be set to 0, not to -1, not to +1, +2, any of that. 0. It needs to be set to 0. And let's see, the other thing that we need to look at is your lens and its focus. For mine, it's got a little, there's a little AFM manual autofocus switch. I can turn that on and off. I want that to M. If If you ever have it in autofocus and you try to adjust the focus on your camera, it could strip the gears. You don't want that to happen, so make sure if you're adjusting it manually that it's set to manual. That could be on your camera, it could be on your lens. Find that, make sure it's set manually. And then the one other thing, I think this is the last thing that you need to make sure you set, and that's the diopter. So on your viewfinder here, the little hole you look through on your camera, on some cameras there's it's either a little slider or a little dial or something like that. You want to make sure that you adjust that properly. And the way that you adjust it, basically what the diopter is it allows you to, if you've got a prescription, you don't see well, you're farsighted or nearsighted, you look through here, it allows you to kind of dial in what your prescription might be. So the way that it works is you press a little ways down. You don't push your shutter release, the little button up top, all the way to take a picture. You push it down partially. You can look through your camera and see there's some numbers and a little graph and stuff like that. Basically the text that you see there inside when you look in your camera, you want to see that, and then just dial that diopter up or down until those are nice and crisp and sharp. By default, should be set for anybody who's got decent vision, and yeah. So anyway, adjust the diopter so everything looks nice and crisp and clean inside of your viewfinder. And again, you're looking at the numbers. You're not looking, because if I look through the lens right now, the camera that's filming me is totally out of focus. We're not looking at that. We're looking at the numbers that are around, or the little symbols that are at the base whenever I press slightly down on the shutter release. So get all those things adjusted, and once you do, I'm pretty sure that's mainly what we need to look at. Once you do, oh, and you've got your, you need to make sure you've got your card in your camera. Don't want to take a whole bunch of great shots and find out you didn't load your card. Usually gives you a warning, but just in case. So once you've got all that dialed in, you're ready to go for making your first exposure. So now what we're going to do is we're going to jump over to a tool that's called Camera Sim. It's a great tool. It's actually online. I'll provide a link for it here in this course, so you can go play with it if you'd like, or you can just use your camera, take some pictures. Digital camera, you can take as many pictures as you want and delete them. So anyway, we're going to go over to the Camera Sim, and I'm going to show you kind of through the lens what you're going to do to adjust for your very first exposure. So that said, let's go ahead and jump over into the Camera Sim, and I'm going to walk you through how to dial in your first exposure. Okay, here we go. All right, so here we are now over at the Camera Simulator. You can actually access this tool on your own by going to camerasim.com and then clicking on Camera Sim here. You got several options to download it for a reasonable cost, or you can check it out for free online by clicking the online version here, and then you can navigate it through a browser. This will be the same tool that I'm using. So let's head back to the Camera Simulator here that I've got embedded on my site, and walk through how to go about dialing in your first manual exposure. So there are two controls you need to be aware of and you need to adjust to get a manual exposure. One is the aperture, the other is the shutter speed. So I'm going to make sure I've got it checked on manual, and here's my dial here for aperture and shutter speed. What you're going to be watching for underneath or to the side of your frame when you look through the viewfinder, you're going to see a little, sort of a graph thing with some notches on it that looks like this. And where you want this bar to be is in the middle before you take a photograph. So you're going to adjust your aperture to wherever that needs to be, maybe somewhere in the middle. So I've got it at f8. We're going to talk a little bit more about apertures and shutter speeds down the road and what they mean and what they control. For now, just adjust them. So you'll adjust your aperture, then you'll adjust your shutter speed until it gets right there in the middle. Once it's in the middle, take your shot, and there you go, a nice exposure. If you end up dialing it and it's either at the to the right or to the left of this little notch in the middle, you're going to have an image that's too dark or too light. So I'm going to drag this up to right about there to snap the picture, and you see that's way too bright. Same thing if I adjust over here and take it way down, snap the picture, too dark. So you want that bar to line up right in the middle of your shot. And there you go. And that's really all there is to it, to, getting a manual exposure using those manual settings. Now, before we end here, if you're really serious about improving and becoming a better photographer and not relying on your camera, but relying on your knowledge of these concepts, then we need you to complete the assignment. We learn, then we do. We learn, then we do. We learn, then we do, then we become better. And that's the only way to become better. So I'm going to jump through the assignment, which you'll find underneath the video over here to the right-ish. Let's go ahead and open this assignment. I'm going to walk through it and give you an idea of what you need to do for the assignment. So this assignment, you're going to take your SLR camera, or if you got a point and shoot camera that has manual settings, you're going to use those to achieve an accurate exposure, and that is your only focus. An accurate exposure. It doesn't matter if the composition's not that great or the light's not that great, or you just look at it and you say, I'm not really happy with that picture. We're not going for a great picture. We're going for a good exposure. Not too light, not too dark, right in the middle. It's highly recommended that you take photos for the assignment under a very bright light. So shooting out in the sunlight or, really, really bright lights inside. Otherwise, you're going to have some unintentional blur from camera shake with slow shutter speeds, which we will cover in a later assignment what that all means and how you control that. So, and also, if you're shooting in really low light, you're going to be kind of limited on what apertures and shutter speeds are available to you. So again, like I said, don't worry about shutter speeds and that sort of thing. We'll learn about that a little bit later. You're just trying to focus on a picture that isn't too dark or too light. And then the other thing, don't forget to focus. So sometimes it's really easy to spend so much attention trying to set your exposure, you forget to focus. So focus first and then adjust your aperture and your shutter speed. Okay, let's take a look at what you're going to be mastering, how to manually control your aperture and shutter speed, the ability to use your camera's light meter, and the ability to focus your camera. All right, so part one, what you're going to need to do. First of all, find a still object. You need to be, the first shot you're going to be about 2 feet away or closer. So 2 feet or closer for the first 3 shots. You're going to start using the aperture setting of 4 or 5.6. So you're going to use the aperture of 4 or 5.6. So make sure you know which dial is adjusting your aperture and which one's adjusting your shutter speed. F4, F5.6, that's typically what they say when they're, a photographer will say when they're referring to aperture, F4, F5.6, F8, or whatever. If you just have a number without the F, it's probably referring to shutter speed. So you're going to set your aperture to F4 or 5.6, 2 feet or closer. Then do the exact same shot using F8. And then do the exact same shot after that using F16 or F22. Now, each time you adjust, you're going to have to change your shutter speed so that that little bar goes in the middle. Do not take a picture without that bar ending up right in the middle of your, of your exposure dial or your exposure meter in your camera. So adjust the aperture, then adjust the shutter speed. So you can see as we move on, now you're going to move to another object 3 or 4 feet away, and then you repeat. So you're going to do the exact same shot 3 or 4 feet away, and you're going to use F4 or 5.6, and then F8, and then 16 or 22. Then you move on to the next shot, do the same thing. So set up one shot using different variations of the aperture, each time adjusting your shutter speed. Once you've done that, then you're going to reverse it. So you're going to do another shot 2 to 3 feet away, but you're going to start with the shutter speed. So you're going to use 1/60th of a second. It'll probably say 60, so you're going to want to dial it to 60, which is 1/60th of a second. You're going to hand hold it, no tripod at all, and then you're going to adjust your aperture until, again, that little bar falls right in the middle. And for this one, like it says, a little bit lower light, so not dark, but maybe indoors or something will work a little bit better for this shot. Next, you're going to do a still object about 2 or 3 feet away. You're going to use 1/30th of a second and then 1/15th of a second. Hand hold, don't slap it on a tripod. So then you'll just continue to repeat 5 to 10 feet away. You'll use these shutter speeds and then set your aperture. You go 10 to 25 feet away and so on. And then once you're done, just go out and have fun with your camera. I want you to just go shoot a bunch of shots, making sure in every case that that little line is right in the middle, not -1, +1, -2, +2, or anything else. Right in the middle. And just go out and explore the world from different angles, different proximities, close, far. And then once you're done with that, the last thing I want you to do is to reflect on what happened. That's a critical part of learning. So you're going to want to go in and go through these paragraphs and reflect and write what worked, what didn't work, what happened, and why did it happen. You may not know the exact answer for why maybe a shot didn't work out, but use your best guess. Just see what you can come up with. And that's it. That's the assignment. One last thing I'll show you here is that I did create a log, an exposure log, so you can track, write down the subject you're photographing, the aperture you used, the shutter speed you used, and then the distance you were from the subject. This is really good for troubleshooting. If something didn't work out, you can go back and say, okay, well, in shot number 10, I used these settings. What might have happened here? So use the log, write it down, go through the assignment, and have fun with it.